Okay, this is the second aggregate demand, aggregate supply video, and this one deals with adding the long run aggregate supply curve on the graph and why that's important. So once again, our labeling aggregate demand goes down and to the right, short run aggregate supply goes up and to the right. What I want you to do at least once every time, the first time you always draw this graph for any question, you're going to put the CI GNet exports there to kind of keep your thoughts together and also to put your seatbelt on, if you will. I explained that on the previous video. If you didn't watch that first, or if you're confused about the basics of aggregate supply, aggregate demand, you probably want to check that video out. This one's going to be more on where to add the long run aggregate supply curve and what that means. The long run aggregate supply curve, you almost want to equate in your mind as like the production possibilities curve. And it allows you to determine whether an economy is at full employment, okay, or at its natural rate of employment, okay? The natural rate of unemployment, the natural rate of employment, the NIRU, the non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment, however they want to phrase it, or not in a recession but not experiencing inflation. So if they gave you and they said an economy had 5% unemployment and 3% inflation, you could assume, okay, that economy's doing really well, that thing's at full employment, or it's on the production possibilities curve. And in those scenarios, you want to draw a long-run aggregate supply curve, hopefully a little straighter than the one I just drew, but it gets the point across, that intersects the other two all at the same spot, okay, the aggregates, the short run and the long run, okay, so you end up here. All right, that is an economy at full employment. If you get asked to show an economy in a recession, okay, you can assume that this economy has unemployment that's unacceptable, okay, unemployment. Now, if they give you a statistic, I would say anything, 7, 8, 9, but they'll make it a little more obvious, I would think, if they gave you a number. They tend not to do that. They just say the economy is experiencing unemployment. If they ask you to show an economy in a recession or experiencing significant unemployment, you would draw the long-run aggregate supply curve over here, and the intersection now, if you think about it, is at an output level that is below full employment. Because remember, the long-run aggregate supply curve represents full employment. So on this original graph, the black, this was full employment here, and we were operating at full employment. Now full employment is over here, okay, is right there. And as you can see, this economy is no longer operating at full employment. It's operating below full employment. And what does that mean? That means a recession. Okay, we are no longer on the production possibilities curve. We are at a point inside it. We are not using all of our resources efficiently. We are experiencing a recession, plain and simple. If they ask you to show an economy that's experiencing inflation, you are going to draw a long-run aggregate supply curve here, and your intersection now, if you think about it, is beyond full employment. So full employment's now here. It's beyond full employment capabilities. If you think it back to the production possibilities curve, you're almost beyond it, which when we do the production possibilities curve, we say that's unattainable given the current level of resources. You almost want to view it as it's unattainable / unsustainable. It's like sprinting or pulling all-nighters. You can pull an all-nighter one night a week in college, maybe two. You can't pull an all-nighter every night of college, okay? You'll just completely break down. And that's sort of like an economy can operate maybe beyond its capabilities for a short amount of time, but usually it starts to experience inflation when that's the case. Okay, and as you can see, the blue mark here, you're beyond in this intersection, beyond full employment. That means that economy is overheating. It's producing past what it's capable of. It's producing past its non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment, and that means there's going to be some inflation, usually low levels of unemployment beyond there, but there's going to be significant inflation starting in that economy. Okay, so that kind of shows you how they use the long-run aggregate supply curve, and they can start you at any point. They can do the same question, and just instead of saying starting at full employment, they can just say started in a recession, or experiencing inflation, or producing beyond its capabilities, which would be the the red. Which would be the blue. If they say an economy is experiencing a recession or below its full employment level, then you would be at the red. Okay, and they can ask you to do, if you just look at every old free response question that deals with aggregate supply, aggregate demand, which there is almost an unlimited supply of those. Anytime they say like starting at full employment, if you just switch that in your head to starting in a recession or starting beyond full employment, you can just it would just start with a different graph, but everything else would, the shifts all from that point on would be the same. So they're definitely going to ask you to start at full employment, a recession, or inflation, and they feel comfortable that they're still testing you on all the shifts. It just doesn't, they just want to make sure you're labeling it properly and starting from the right position. Okay? A couple of things. Okay, so let's say they have us start at full employment. So once again, we're going to have our long-run aggregate supply curve, price level, real GDP, aggregate demand goes here, short-run aggregate supply. So this is us starting at full employment. I labeled CIG net exports once already, so I'm not going to do it again. If they tell you that there has been a change, or maybe I will, just let's say they say the economy has gone into a recession, okay, and they want you to show that. I'm going to show that with a red shift here. Well, there's your shift, okay? Now you're in a recession. You can see that the intersection is below full employment. If they tell you that the economy is going to self-correct in the long run, or if they say there's no fiscal and monetary action, if they go out of their way to tell you what's going to happen in the long run, well, in the long run, you are to assume that the economy is going to correct itself. Okay? And anytime there's a self-correcting economy, self-correcting, you are going to shift the short-run aggregate supply curve. Okay, and you're going to shift it back to homeostasis or back to its full employment rate. This is where it wants to be naturally. And so you would shift back here. Now, why is it doing that? Because in a recession, resources, essentially workers, but also companies that sell resources like steel or oil, there's not a lot of demand for those products. And when there's not a lot of demand for products, prices of those products tend to get driven down. So if you think about it, if there's 50 people unemployed, and they're looking for work, they're willing to accept lower wages than they normally would because employment is scarce. So they're competing with a lot of other unemployed resources. That drives the price down. Remember, the price of resources getting cheaper shifts the aggregate supply curve back to the right, and so that would self-correct. Now, the question always comes up in class, well, how long is the long run? In this class, you don't have to wonder about that. You know, in the real world, the answer is no one really knows. That's kind of the famous Keynes line, in the long run, we're all dead. How long is this going to take? The answer is sometimes you don't know how long it will take. But the argument that this class makes is in the long run, the economy will correct itself. On the other hand, let's say we're agreeing. Let's say the economy now starts experiencing inflation, and they don't tell you anything else changes. They say, okay, the economy starts experiencing inflation, or it's operating beyond full employment, and you can see that here. We're now over here. We are beyond full employment output. And then they ask you what happens in the long run. Well, once again, because they don't say there's fiscal or monetary policy, the economy will self-correct. Therefore, the short-run aggregate supply curve will shift back, and the economy will correct itself and get back to full employment. And the only difference really between all of these is, okay, your price level was here to start. If you end up down here, your price level dropped, but your output stayed the same. If you went this way, your price level went up, but your output stayed the same. And in the long run, the prices tend not to be as significant because they kind of get factored into the equation. They get accounted for. If inflation is going to be 6% a year, then every loan you get is over 6%, and your wages go up at least 6%. So it's baked in, if you will. Okay, so those are the self-correcting shifts. Let's just deal a little bit with, so now you're here again. We're at more or less full employment. That's what I was trying to draw there. Board is sometimes the calibration's a little bit of a mess, as you're aware of. Okay, so here we are, real GDP, CIG net exports. If for some reason they ask you, they have the economy and they say, let's just, instead of drawing this one here, let's just say they start us in a recession, just to switch it up a little bit. So I'm over here. Okay, so there's my aggregate demand. I'm over here. You can see I'm in a recession. Okay, and that should look a little prettier, I understand. Okay, more or less, right? So long-run aggregate supply, you're here. If there's fiscal and monetary policy, you just need to think about what's going to change. If it's fiscal, it's going to be C or G usually. either increasing taxes, decreasing personal taxes, increasing government spending, decreasing government spending, or increasing or decreasing transfer payments like Social Security or something along those lines. If it's monetary policy, it's going to tend to impact I more. And so when they ask you, let's say the Fed starts buying bonds, that's going to cause the aggregate demand curve to go back to the right. Sometimes in the past, they've started you in a recession. They've tried to fool you. They say, Congress responds to the recession by trying to balance the budget, so they cut spending and raise taxes. Well, according to this class, that would make aggregate demand worse, and it would shift back to the left. So don't always think that you have to take something that's broken and fix it. Just respond to the information that they give you. So once again, self-correcting tends to be a supply shift. Fiscal and monetary policy tend to shift aggregate demand. The one thing in this class that you're going to shift both graphs on is decreasing business taxes or increasing business taxes. Changing business taxes makes things either more expensive to make. So if it's cheaper to make, you shift aggregate supply to the right. If it's more expensive, you shift it to the left. And if you raise business taxes, they have less money, to invest, so that aggregate demand goes to the left. If you decrease business taxes, they, in theory, have more to invest, aggregate demand goes to the right. Okay, so hopefully these two videos together, about 25 minutes worth of time, kind of sum up aggregate supply, aggregate demand. If you still have questions about aggregate supply, aggregate demand, you absolutely, positively need to get it worked out before the AP exam. Without understanding this graph and all the different aspects of it, it's going to be very hard to get a successful score on the AP.